You're listening to WASH, That Washington Sound. This is the Aftershow for our most recent season, Coyote Canyon. That Washington Sound is the name of our version of the role-playing game Kids on Bikes by John Gilmore and Doug Lewandowski. Our most recent season centered around a small, fictional town in northern Arizona called Coyote Canyon in the 1980s. Now, this is the Aftershow, where we will discuss the game and plot points out of character. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to all of the episodes this season, stop now. Go back and listen to or watch the previous episodes first before listening or watching this one. All of the episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for That Washington Sound. I'll give you a chance to stop the show now before we continue. Okay, end of spoiler alert. My name is Gabriel Rodriguez, and I played Clay Owens on the season of the game. I will be your host for this show. Let me introduce the rest of our cast. Next to me is Janelle Farr Rodriguez, my lovely wife, who played Penny Marin. Next is Paul Lang, who played Orion. Next to him is Jaden Farr. She played Kimberly Lute. Then there's Hayden Colvin, who played Frankie Moss. And finally, our game master and the author of our adventure, plus the regular host of That Washington Sound, Emil Rodriguez. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing?
Hey.
Hello. It's good to see you all and to come back together to talk about Coyote Canyon. It was a doozy of a show, wasn't it?
Oh my god!
Oh, it was great. I loved it.
So I want to get started with just kind of opening the door to general reactions to the whole season, and I actually want to start with Jaden.
Oh god!
I'm going to give everybody a chance. So I want to start there since it was your first time playing with us.
Yep. Wow. General reaction. It was awesome. It was just a ton of fun. A lot of surprises. Goodness. It was just a ton of fun. I don't really know, unless we're talking something specific, what to say about it. Just it was crazy. It was a great adventure. Lots of surprises, especially the end, obviously. And I haven't even gotten to finish all of Red Oaks, but it was still just a mind-blowing thing. So it was great. I loved it.
All right. Whoever wants to talk next, just go for it. But I'll save Emil for last.
It's very. Oh, was something else?
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, okay. It's very hard when comparing the two seasons. I don't think there's a clear winner between both of them, but both of them were so stellar kind of thing, and there were definitely things I felt in both of them. There was a lot of hijinks, and then it slowly went into very intense emotional parts, as well as just sinking deeper and deeper into the mystery of it all, which was so well done by Emil kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, and then I don't know how specific we want to get right now, but
you get as specific as you want to get. I will let everybody know who's listening or watching. That Washington Sound is the name of kind of our entire series of games. And our very first season centered around the fictional town of Red Oaks, Washington. That's why it's That Washington Sound. It's the radio station in Red Oaks. And basically everybody here, with the exception of Jaden, played in that first season of That Washington Sound, played different characters in Red Oaks. And that town is set in 1993. So Coyote Canyon is sort of this prequel adventure. And we'll get into that in just a minute, but it's a prequel adventure to the first season of That Washington Sound. Our other dear friend, Rebecca Farr, we call her Becca, she was the additional player in that game. Janelle, you want to take it?
Yeah, it was so fast paced. I didn't know if our characters were going to make it out alive at points, because there were just so many different things to avoid and get away from while we were trying to acquire these objects. And I was I don't know if we're gonna make it, just because it was a lot. It was the intensity was turned up in this game, and we weren't supposed to have as much time. So I thought Emil had gone a little bit crazy, and then it was oh no, we we have time. It's okay. So I was like, does he want this story to happen? I don't know. The first episode, you all died.
I think that's one of the things that I actually really liked about it is because, you know, everyone has said thus far that like Red Oaks is like truly incredible. It's like the first one, but it just turned out so great. And Coyote Canyon was supposed to be really short, but it ended up going so many more episodes that we thought. And I think it just kind of unfolded so much better than anyone thought it was going to, and had so much more depth in the storyline than we thought it was going to. So I think that's actually one of my favorite parts, is just how pleasantly surprised everyone was about how it went and like the turnout of it.
Yeah, so again, for those of you that don't know, when we actually sit down and play a game of Kids on Bikes, we generally play in sort of 4-hour sessions. And then those 4 hours get divided into 3 episodes that then get put out to the podcast, get put out to YouTube on a weekly basis. So when we're playing, after every 3 episodes, like on your end of things, on the podcast or YouTube, we've recorded all 3 of them together, and then we record another 3 after that. So that's how that works. And so initially for Coyote Canyon, it was meant to be 3 sessions, right?
Yep.
Emil? It was meant to be 3 sessions, and we just kept it going longer and longer, and it became the 5 sessions and like 15 episodes that it became. So yeah, that's just to clarify that. Hayden, any reactions on your end?
I ended up, so at first I was like, oh, this isn't going to be as good as Red Oaks, you know, like this is all because we're all just like all the new characters and everything. I'm like, these guys aren't gonna get along, and this is gonna like just turn into like a powder keg and be a mess. And then, but after like a few episodes started going, I really did start to enjoy it, and I really did start to enjoy a lot of the character interactions that we were all starting to have, and how that was kind of snowballing throughout. And then just the way that everything churned out in the end, I was not expecting everything to wrap up in like a bow like that. Congratulations, Emil. The ending was really, really impressive.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Hayden. I wasn't entirely sure about the format change, because before with Red Oaks and with the second season with Perch Pike was the other season with a completely different cast. Those were played live and in person, and you know, sort of the elephant in the room was COVID. And when the pandemic hit, we were caught without like an end to Perch Pike, and we wanted to play some more, so we did this sort of virtual stream version of Coyote Canyon, and that's why it was meant to be so short, because we weren't entirely sure if this was gonna even work at all. But it did, but I was like you too, where I wasn't sure if it was going to work at first. I wasn't sure if we were going to get along as well as we did during Red Oaks, because if you go back and listen to Red Oaks, and it's available on thatwashingtonsound.com, if you want to go back to listen to our first season, it's not available on podcasts or anything because there's copyrighted content on it, and the audio quality is not as good. But if you want to go back, it's available there. You can listen to it there. If you go back to that, all of our characters in universe became really tight and really close friends. And when we were designing our interactions here in Coyote Canyon, that was not the case at all. We had characters that didn't like each other, characters that grew up in.
Well, I mean, even in the first one, we had a really intense love triangle going on and stuff.
In Red Oaks.
In Red Oaks, that's true. We had an intense love triangle, but at the same time, like the characters did join together and became very tight knit, despite the triangle. And that's kind of my point with that, is that here in Coyote Canyon, we had characters that just didn't like each other. Characters that grew up in very different, like socioeconomic, like strata. Like with Red Oaks, pretty much everyone in Red Oaks is either related to or part of someone very important in the town. In Coyote Canyon, that is not the case at all. Like my character Clay, and and Orion, Paul's character, they're not really prominent families, prominent people in the town. Everybody else is kind of in a prominent position, relatively speaking. Frankie's probably in like the most middle tier, I would hazard to say. But we're not as we're very different in that one. And so and I don't believe that by the end of Coyote Canyon we ended up as tightly knit like friends as we did in Red Oaks.
No, I think we, like what Hayden was saying, I think we had to work really, really hard for kind of the character development with each other, because everything we were running all the time. So it's like
There was a lot going on.
comment here, a little interaction here, like, or reaction, and that's like all we got to work with.
Yeah.
Which I think it was fun because it was challenging. Most of us haven't ever really done any of this role playing to this level before, I don't
No.
think. So like being thrown into the situation where it's just like you have to look for those pockets or those windows where you can, oh yeah, I'm playing a character, I'm not just doing tasks. This is how they'd react, or this is something that they would say. I really earned those moments.
All right, I think we've talked long enough. Emil, what are your reactions on your end of things as game master?
I was also kind of with Hayden on it. I wasn't sure how well you guys would gel together, because like when we were doing the world building, I saw like every single time you guys would, like, I would ask a question like, do you like this person? Do you dislike, or do you know this person? And you would always say, I don't like this person. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's another one. By the end of it, like there was more dislikes across all the sheets. Like we ran out of dislike questions really quickly. But it was fine. It turned out pretty well. It was very chaotic, and that was mostly because of the structure of the mystery. And like I saw how much chaos was about to happen, and I'm like, you know what? I just want to see where this goes. So I just kind of like allowed it, and I'm glad I did, because it made for some really interesting encounters and stuff.
Well, I mean, I think a huge contribution to what made this town so interesting, whereas opposed to with Red Oaks, there is some weird stuff, but mostly our like forces are other people chasing after us. With this town, the whole world was shifting all around us, and like it was scary and strange, but it made a very new, cool dynamic, I think.
Yeah, I think it was a lot more compelling how we were up against like not just supernatural beings and entities, but just environmental challenges as well. Just the idea that at any point, depending on who we were or what we had been exposed to, like we might look across the canyon and it's flooded, or we might look across the canyon and it's still bone dry, and like two people standing next to each other would see different things, and in some cases even interact differently with it. You know, I go back to the ferry that we had to take in near the end there, as we were kind of finally coming across the canyon to make it to the Churnbello Bay Resort. And there was all of that role playing that we had to do with all of our friends who were in various states of sort of hallucinating the boat that is supposed to be like in front of us or not. And there was a lot of these sort of like environmental challenges that we had to face that we did not have in Red Oaks or any of the other seasons that we've done here.
I think us all not being on the same page as well was what made this one had, I think, one of my favorite moments in a tabletop game ever was when we were all in the second floor of the museum.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get the one like MacGuffin that's there. And then we're trying to come up with a plan. Clay smashes the glass. It all turns into like a mess so quickly because none of us are on the same page. And so, oh my gosh. And we're all just like absolutely losing our minds. And that was like just just chaos. And it was outstanding. I loved it.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, like Clay smashes into the glass, gets glass shards all up in his back for no reason, like no good reason. Like,
yeah, he opted to lay down on the glass himself.
Like that was one of the dumbest things that Clay did the entire game. Orion is like goes out of the back, and the whole fire escape just crashes down from the second floor. You should have died.
Yeah.
and everybody else is just in all these compromised positions throughout the entire room.
Like a situation that like it didn't need to be that bad, but like us having fun with the characters is like what created a situation that we totally didn't need to be in. But it's what made it fun.
I still want like a comic strip of that moment.
Yeah.
I can just see it in my head. It was probably my favorite moment of the entire game, just because like I probably had to mute myself at one point because I was laughing on the other end. I was just like, I can't even. It was the best.
There were a lot of intense moments, but like there were also multiple times I paralleled us to the Scooby-Doo gang.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to remember, like, I think about like that episode with the museum and the MacGuffin and like just running, and it didn't start out that way. Like we started out in a field looking for missing stuff.
Yeah.
And like really scary things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And getting stuck in like silos or whatever.
Yeah, the grain silo.
silos.
You guys are stuck in it.
I was like, oh, yeah, that is how we started this game. And then we end up in like broken glass and falling off of buildings and just closing curtains on situations.
That or like you're like threatening to blow up an entire mine.
That's what I was gonna say. Like
Popping up in the middle of like a pep rally in the schools.
There was a lot of moments of like fun and levity for the moments of like how dark this one got and how like dangerous this one got. There were a lot of really good moments.
Yeah, there was a lot of like whiplash emotionally, and I think it was necessary due to the structure of the game, but like and the story, it was really necessary. But there were like these whiplash moments where it was something very serious, very dark, very threatening, dangerous things, and then these like ridiculously hilarious things that just happened, almost like with the turn of a dime, you know, just it becomes this really hilarious thing. Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk about character creation. We've sort of talked a little bit about our characters now, and I kind of want to go around the group, and I want to ask each of you what your thought process was going into making your character this season. And with this one, I wanted to start with Hayden, because I found Frankie to just be particularly interesting.
Mm-hmm.
My thought process. Well, I just kind of wanted to run with like rough around the edges, but then like take a little bit of a twist on it, you know? So like, okay, I'm going to go into this game and I'm going to be saying that I dislike most of the other characters, or, you know, I'm going to, as people are going to, you know, flesh things out, I'm going to, like, my response portion of it is, you know, even if they're like doing something positive, I think there was like a really dark part where I was like spreading rumors about Janelle's character, and I'm like, okay, let's dig myself into a hole, and then I'm going to see if I can see how much I can climb out of it during the game. And it's not like Frankie became like some sort of redeemed character or anything. Like I think she's still a bad person, but you know, there wasn't like time to be doing this. And in my head I'm like, you know, would Frankie really try to like fix a relationship right now? Like, you know, so as time was going on, it's just like, oh, let's kind of keep her not being the greatest person, you know. But I wanted her to really have a soft spot for her family and like her mother, and just whenever I was trying to make decisions for him, it was just, I don't know, seeing like how much I could not dig myself out of a hole after a point. I'm not exactly sure. I was almost confusing myself with the character at a point.
I do have a question about Frankie. In the episode where we're in like the doorways and like Frankie steps through and sees her mother like laying in the bed through that one doorway in that lab, what was going through your head?
I'm like, well, either this is, you know, like a fake door, a trap, you know, like if this is, those doors were doors into our reality, assumedly. Well, I guess we didn't know that at the point because we hadn't opened up all of the doors. So these doors could also be those like fake rooms that we had run into in the past, or so, you know, just. So I opened up that door and there was one of two things that could be going on. It's either my actual mother, in which case something very spooky is going on, and you know, like there's no good in me like screaming or waking her up, so I'm gonna let her sleep. So, you know, I whispered, "Sorry, Mom," and close the door. Otherwise, it's like a horrible nightmare world through that door, and I don't want to go in there. So regardless, the door's getting shut again.
Yeah.
And but no, it did raise some questions on oh no, why do these people need a back door into our auto body shop? So hopefully we dealt with the baddies.
And it was kind of the same thing for Jaden. I'm forgetting your character's name.
Kimberly.
Thank you. For Kimberly, where like the door was also leading to your parents' room. There was obviously no one there, but
there was a big part of me that wanted to go in because I wanted to know what was happening. Like I wanted to know if it was another, because I think we had experienced at that point. I think it was Nellie's character who had gone into a room and started overhearing stuff. And so I was like, well, it could be that. And I want to know what my character would overhear because like I'm really curious. But at the same time, I was like, there could just be a bad guy in there. They shut the door. I'd be stuck by myself with broken ribs. I can't do anything. Like, I was like, I cannot go in this room. Oh, and oh, my ribs.
I got it, guys. I can make it.
Really, I'm okay. So like a big part of me really wanted to go in because I was curious, but like the more logical and smarter side of me was like, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was just curious about that.
Can you go here?
If at the end, like that was one of the things I wanted to know. I was like, what was in the room? Like, what was it all about? Like,
we'll get to that. We'll get to those questions in a minute. But go into your character creation process too. Since again, it was the first time you were playing with us in this kind of format. Like you've played other role-playing games before, like Dungeons and Dragons and things. So like, how did you approach creating Kimberly?
This one was a lot different than like a D&D because there was so much more that went into it, like the trope and whatnot. The trope I was trying to figure out because I was like, okay, like me as like myself, like I wanted to make sure I could play this character easily, at least for the first time. Like it was the first time, so it was like less complications, the less struggle, the better. So I found one that I was like, okay, this looks like a character who's like really upbeat, outgoing. I can totally play this up. So that was like my first thought. And then I was just building like the personality and whatnot. Honestly, she got crazier and crazier. And I was like, how am I going to play this character? Like, I don't like what? But once I finally embraced it, I was like, okay, you know what? This is going to be a lot of fun. I'll just think outside the box and figure it out as I go.
Becoming a gunslinger.
A gunslinger, and honestly, it's really cool. Slightly obsessed, but really cool.
You were the only character I've ever given a gun to, like in this series, and you were so apprehensive to use it.
Okay, and this. Let me tell you why. Like, as much as I wanted to like take the gun out and just start shooting everything, like everything that I have played up until now, the dungeon master, like anytime we get a bad roll, they will make it like if I had shot and rolled poorly, somebody would have gotten shot like in the arm or they would have died. That's why I was so apprehensive because in my experience, it's like, oh, you rolled poorly, you have like these heavy consequences. So I was like, I can't do it. And of course, like the one time I did bring out my gun to shoot, I shot the light pole and it just like power went out. And I was like, see, if this is any indicator of how I'm gonna roll when I pull my gun, this is a really bad idea. So I loved it, but at the same time I was just like, unless I'm desperate. I think I pulled it like 3 times though. One of the times it didn't work. Another one of the times like it did. Like,
oh yeah, the other time it was in slow motion.
Yeah. Oh, they slowed it down.
Yeah.
So it didn't shoot, but the little shadow characters, like that worked. So all in all, like I loved making my character. I loved playing Kimberly. I think she's a really fun character.
And you know, when we were doing character creation and like we were going around and talking about our relationships with each other, because we had established that Frankie's mom was ill with cancer. And I established that your mom had recently died
like
too.
In the last month.
Yeah, like just a couple of months last month, and just really recently. You were very like raw and emotional about it. I almost established that she died of cancer specifically, so that you would have something to like relate to Frankie with more.
Well, I mean, actually, I really liked that you pulled that.
But I held it
because me and Frankie did have like some kind of like a friendship.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that, you know, that makes sense. Like we have something in common. His mom's sick, mine just died. Like obviously there's gonna be that like that character gravitation, you know.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well. And in fact, I think it's Nelly who said that I was obsessed with the hunts and like made my character really cool. So yeah, it was
that is something that I really like about the character creation system on Kids on Bikes. Like we can contribute to each other's characters and really build them up and flesh them out in ways that maybe we didn't consider, but that ultimately proved to be useful elements to our characters. So yeah, that's the the gunslinger aspect of your character kind of came about because we sort of crowdsourced from within the rest of the cast to build you up with that kind of skill, and it was useful.
And it's really interesting because like in my head, I knew what my character was gonna look like. I had her all planned. I was like, okay, this is gonna be how she is, and then like it took a completely different turn, and I was like, okay, never mind. This is my character. Cool. So yeah, it was really, really fun. It was really interesting, and it definitely was slightly challenging in the fact that I was like, oh, like I totally had to do a brain switch. So, but it was great.
It's such a beautiful, sincere depiction of the improv of D&D kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, Paul, tell us about Orion.
Oh, Orion. So, I guess in the character creation process, whenever I'm creating a character for any kind of D&D D20 kind of thing, like what I've tried to do for a while now is like try to be like different every time, try something new, like expand my like abilities to try out different hats kind of thing. But for both Luke and Orion, my first part was my first idea of the character was comic relief kind of thing, and it didn't really turn out that way either way kind of thing. But I think the really funny thing was I had talked to Emil about wanting to be like a hippie character before like everyone else created the popcorn hippies, the trailer park hippies kind of thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too perfect kind of. So I just shoved myself in there kind of thing. But I don't know, overall, like I think it's sometimes hard to be too much of not yourself kind of thing. Like at least for me, like I try to have these characteristics, but I tend to gravitate towards this really super invested / paternal character.
Yeah, I think in many ways Orion sort of became the heart of the group, where he was just super invested in like the lives of everyone around him and just trying to protect the town and and his home and that's why like the ending is just so devastating to Orion.
Oh yeah.
And we'll get to that ending for sure. But no, that's really cool.
One more thing I will say is like between Luke and Orion, like I'm definitely way more excited about Orion's future, especially now that he has blue fireball abilities.
I know he's got like powers.
Yeah. So I'm super curious to where his fate will lie in the future.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
You know?
So I went into this like, okay, I played a character that like I made because I knew I would be able to play them, and I loved my character. I love my character in Red Oaks, and I feel like everything kind of just went my way with my character. I feel like I got really lucky with that in Red Oaks. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play the complete opposite of that character and do this like plastic beauty who does not want to be in this town, really doesn't care about this town, just wants to get out. Because then she's going to have to stay and do whatever to like save herself and it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I went into making my character. And I didn't really like whether I liked someone or not. It wasn't like I was going in wanting to be opposed to everybody. It was just, okay, if I'm keeping up the status, if I don't really care about this town, how would this character react to each person? And I really liked kind of how that turned out. I thought it was interesting that like through character development, she and Orion had like were childhood friends, and he's like this hippie. But it ended up making sense because like obviously there's like a freedom in like that hippie lifestyle of like, oh, we don't need anything, we don't really care, like it's
have unlimited popcorn.
Like we just do what we want sort of thing. And I think that was really interesting to see like the struggle there with her, like this childhood friend who kind of has this freedom in this town that she feels trapped in, but she doesn't want to be associated with them because like she has this other status, and like getting out might mean being popular and like having skills to move on in the future. And then of course like these rumors that got spread about her, I was like, well, what when we made that, when it was like, oh, Frankie, like Hayden's character Frankie spread rumors about me about something that actually like happened. And I remember saying that and Emil being like, okay, do you want to share what that is? And it was like, no, because I don't know what it is yet. Like it's going to be something and it can be useful later in the game, but I don't know. So for me, it was really just laying the groundwork and then trying my best to like play into that character as much as I could.
For me, Clay, so when we were playing season 1 of Red Oaks, I played a girl, and I played the Plastic Beauty when I played Jessica Timbers, and I love Jessica. I love her so much. She's still. I would rather play Jessica than Clay. But with Coyote Canyon, Clay came to me literally the day of recording our first session. I was not sure who I was going to play. I was not sure what he was like. I knew two things. I knew that I wanted him to be a boy, and that I wanted him to be a little bit older, but not so old that he's like a senior in high school or anything. So I put him at 15. And that he was going to be kind of a more superstitious kind of fella. Those are the only things I knew that I wanted to do going into Coyote Canyon. And then the day of, I was like, I got it. It's like this dude who's like hardcore Western, like is raised on a ranch. He is a cowboy through and through. At least he feels like he is. He's got a chip on his shoulder because like his older sibling has like gone off and left the family farm and all these things. But he also really likes everybody. and like I went in knowing no matter what anybody else says, Clay likes everybody. Clay thinks he's got a good relationship with every single person. Like this kid who is like so optimistic and he tries to just be fairly pleasant and has this outrageous accent. And that was the other thing I wanted to go in with like an accent that I could maintain for basically the whole game.
Excellent.
Yeah, man, that was
and that was it. And that was it. Like the name Clay came to me maybe 10 minutes before we started recording. His fear of like spiders and like little crawly things came to me like at that time too. And like most of his sort of backstory about the family farm, his uncle Chuck owning the feed store, all of that stuff came as we were recording, as we were deciding the different things. And then as you guys kept influencing what Clay was all about, and then like the idea that Frankie suspected that Clay's accent was a sham and all of this stuff, that just sort of enriched the character even more. And I just kept holding on to those little nuggets until as like close to the end as I could. To make it more interesting. But I really like Clay. I've grown to be fond of him, and I hope I get to play him again at some point. Emil, let's. I want you to talk about some of the characters that you created, like Mr. Gray Skies, how you fleshed out Copper Pete, and of course our powered character. Like, what was that all about?
So I'll start with Copper Pete and Gray Skies. It'll be a little bit easier to kind of go over. Copper Pete, no idea if that was going to be a character. You guys kind of made him up, and he kind of became a piece of like the world. So he became kind of a staple, and I realized I could use that staple later on. So every time I was trying to figure out how the end, like how everything should end, I had 4 endings that could have happened. And you guys took the route where Copper Pete went with you guys to do a few things. And I kind of rolled with that. And then I kind of merged one of the endings with the other ending because like things were just kind of warping in that direction. And that's the nice thing about this. Like I can write all I want. I'm always going to come out with the wrong thing. And you guys are going to like push the story forward with something that's that'll inspire something more creative than I could have done by myself. So like Copper Pete became way more important than I initially like thought he was going to be. I was kind of sad that he was scared off with that bad roll. Because
definitely a couple things you were trying to push, but we screw up one way or another.
It's fine. We got there. So yeah, Copper Pete was an interesting character that I really ended up liking, and I think I figured out his accent by the end of the last couple episodes. Because before I think I just used Colt's accent to be Copper Pete's for a while. So Mr. Gray Skies was always in the story. So the Churnbello Bay Resort and Casino, which I've misnamed like a million times.
Yeah, you always said a resort and hotel.
Yeah, I kept saying that. Is something that I had planned for Red Oaks. That was one of the original storylines that I was possibly going to go with. But I kept shelving it, and I was going to use it in Perch Pike, and then I shelved it there. I'm like, okay, this is probably the best place to introduce it. Mr. Gray Skies is like this mysterious entity that rules over it in the other place. And like he's kind of a force of wills and stuff. It's a lot of weird stuff about this character. But I always intended for him to be captured by something malicious. It wasn't until later in development for the story that I realized that the malicious entity was just going to be a guy with like too much access to these horrifying artifacts and stuff. But Mr. Gray Skies was always going to be an older man. He was always going to be in a wheelchair. And he was originally just going to be around town, and you guys were going to like speak to him and recognize him as like a local and stuff. And then by the end of the series, you're going to realize that you never knew Mr. Gray Skies. It was just a person that appeared one day, and like you had these recollections of a person that you've always known, but it was just more an inherent thing of Mr. Gray Skies. But it didn't turn out that way, because my initial plan of the story was that you guys are in the first episode, you guys were going to get to the hotel grand opening. So that was how I originally plotted it out. I thought you guys were going to get to the grand opening episode 1.
And we didn't get to the grand opening until 2. Was it 3?
2.
No.
You guys didn't get to the grand opening until the last episode.
Yeah, to the very end of the series.
Yeah, because that night you guys just went directly to the hotel before the grand opening. So I think everything time just kind of stretched instead of like closing the gap between points in time. So I couldn't really introduce Gray Skies the way I needed him to be in the story. But it worked out. I do like that there was like 2 interactions with this like powerful entity. So that was Gray Skies. And then Colt. I didn't develop Colt by myself. I was talking to our mutual friend, Nathan Erno. And I was like trying to figure out what the power character was going to be this time around. And he just threw out the idea of like a school mascot. I'm like, okay, sure. And then he said, but it has to be like a horse. I'm like, but we've already established that this mascot is like a quail.
Yeah.
It's like, well, can the quail just think it's a horse?
Well, that identifies as a horse.
I'm like, I mean, sure, why not, right? So I wrote this whole backstory about, I think it was like Jebediah Coyote having a horse
Yeah.
and all this stuff. And then I'm like, no, that doesn't really work. I went with Mr. Gray Skies having a horse and being an original resident in the town. And he was, Colt was the horse of Jebediah. And this was the personification of what he believed his horse like was thinking, how he emoted, and how he behaved. And the closest like receptacle that it could find to help out was the school mascot suit.
Yeah. I really like Colt. I think out of all of us, I spent the most time wearing him. I'm pretty sure, even though Clay was just so completely adverse to everything that Colt was. Just like to Clay, Colt was like this demon, like possessive thing that he had no business being around, let alone like in. But I really, really liked Colt and like just sort of his innocent way of dealing with things. Plus, we came up with some really cool powers for him, I think.
Oh yeah.
Anybody want to like elaborate on like your favorite powers and things about Colt?
Well, I actually did like mine a lot because it ended up being half a reflection of something personal, kind of thing. It was just flying. Yeah. It was just like
Yeah, your power that you called was flying.
Yeah.
And you had certain limitations, right? There was depending on how many like tokens you used, you could fly for a certain amount of time or a distance.
Yeah. The little time I used it wasn't really restrictive for what we needed to do, which was awesome. But like it was a very instinctual thing, and just like being the hippie boy and stuff like that. It was like, of course he wants to fly, kind of.
He's Jay, Kimberly got seriously injured while wearing Colt.
Yeah.
And then she tried to like just toughen up and like deal with it for like the rest of the game. What was that about?
Well, one of the other characters, I think it was Hayden's character, was in like serious trouble, and in the line of like attack, I had Colt, so I was like, sure, I can totally make this work. I didn't. I mean, I made it work, but I got hit beforehand, and like with you got healed by Colt.
I did, yeah.
Because of one of the stones. I didn't have that stone, and so I was just like, well, there's literally nothing my character can do right now. So hopefully I just keep rolling well, and she'll just keep going, because if not, we'll have to find something else. But it's funny. I myself didn't think about like asking, hey, is there like a first aid around, or is there anything I can do for my ribs? Like, because Colt didn't work, and I was like, well, I think that was my only option. And then I don't remember who suggested it, but somebody else did, and I was like, hey, that would be a great idea. Then I don't have to keep rolling to see if my character can just keep going. But yeah, that's basically what that was about. I just didn't know that there's any other option. So I was like, we'll just keep going. It's fine.
I really like the power that I came up with for Colts, because yeah, I was in a lot of pain. Clay was in a lot of pain after all those like glass shards that he stupidly laid on, and then we just needed everything to just stop, because we were just running and like we were trying to get out and away, and so I was like, he can like freeze time, but like in a bubble. And in the process, like I almost got pulled in the way Frankie did. Frankie did end up getting pulled into sort of like the black ooze and stuff. But I almost got pulled in as well. But at the same time, I got healed. And so like, I don't remember who it was either that suggested you should wear Colt, Jaden, to heal Kimberly. But I think it may have been me. I'm not sure. Because I knew like, okay, well, I got in and I was fine afterwards. But then then it turned out it was because of the stone.
The
But
the minute detail rules of cult were definitely confusing at times.
Well, it was like the two different like substances. There's the silver and then the black, right?
Yeah, there were two different
Yeah.
groups, whether he healed or not, and
Yeah.
some other stuff like that.
whether he got recharged or not, like
Uh-huh.
dummy me, like putting him in the washing machine.
I'm getting dizzy. Oh no.
I personally think Janelle had the best power with chainsaw.
I love
Saw
her
blade
power.
arm.
That was
Cool.
fun.
That was cool.
That whole it just came naturally because like at the beginning it's like, again, what will this character, what length will this character do to escape this town? And it's like she will pick up this chainsaw
Yeah.
and try to cut her way through whatever is coming at her, and it worked. And I was just like, okay, my character, like, she has depth, like she can do some things. So by the time it came to helping Orion as like this childhood friend, it's like, yeah, okay, like she's not really been there for him, but she's saved him from danger before, so she's definitely going to do it again.
Yeah.
It was just a natural thing to be like, well, all she remembers is the last time she was in danger, she picked up this chainsaw, so that's what we're going with. And it turned out well. I think the most useful power was like just sucking up the energy, because that solved a bunch of our problems. It got rid of like the massive like bad guys,
Yeah.
and it recharged our powered character. So I was a little bit surprised that we were allowed to have that as a power, because it was more powerful than some of the other things, because it just annihilated what was in the path and gave us more to work with.
Yeah, I feel like that part ended up being even more powerful than the time stop.
I think like the first time you guys used it, you used how many tokens? Was it 2 or 3 for the consumption?
I'm not sure how many it was.
I think we went pretty hard on that one because
Okay,
there
it
was
might have been 3 then. Yeah.
But I remember that you guys thought that there was a lot of creatures in that tunnel, but there was like 12 total. And then in the scene, I mean, you had no way of knowing that. But like in the scene where you were by the elevators and you tried to do the same thing, you only used 1 token and he was becoming overwhelmed. That's the thing with consumption. Like he doesn't get his powers back until he's done consuming. Mm-hmm. So like I was really pushing the horde towards you guys. And it was getting to the point that they were starting to reach you, even though they were getting consumed. That's how many there were.
Yeah. I'm very thankful for the power that Hayden came up with, though, because it's pretty much what allowed me to survive the first episode, because the room was trying to eat me. So that was clever, because then we got to use that again with some of those rooms. And like it I guess in retrospect, it was probably bad that we like sealed off or made those rooms go away. I think the thought process at the time was like, if we can't be like caught and put in these rooms to like slowly get consumed by this, then we have a better chance of making it out of here. But then we sacrificed like gaining some knowledge about who's involved with what and why.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, that was character creation and some of the other NPCs that we dealt with. Let's talk about Coyote Canyon, like the town itself. And I'm gonna, for the video version, I'm gonna put a picture of the map up here briefly for a little bit. So Coyote Canyon is an interesting town. It's built in sort of these 3 levels, where the bottom of the canyon has sort of this residential space. The middle part of up the mountain is sort of the main commerce and like town functions, plus the mine. And then up at the top near the peak is like the school, the drive-in theater, and all those things. And then across the way on the other side of the canyon is the mountain that houses the Trinbello Bay Resort and Casino. So I want to sort of briefly go over and ask you guys your thoughts about the town itself and its creation, like your favorite parts, or anything that you wish we had like explored more. And then I'll have a separate question to ask Emil. So, like, what were your favorite parts of Coyote Canyon, the town?
I liked the whole. Sorry, Jaden.
No,
go
okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I liked the whole idea that we came up with, everything having to do with the hippies. I thought during character creation was absolute genius. Their like exodus back and forth in and out of the city, their popcorn eating, their like magic and blue flames, and just anything that had anything to do with the hippies, I was having an absolute blast with during character creation.
I really liked the town setup. I liked that we had to take the, what is it called again?
The funicular.
The funicular.
The
I
car.
love the funicular. I thought that was so much fun. That's honestly probably one of my favorite features of our game. I thought it was interesting, of course, that the higher class was up on that top ledge, and the lower class were actually down here, like all that stuff. And then when these two, when Clay and Frankie were like, well, let's blow it up. No one cares anyway. I was just like, you guys, there are people there. You can't just blow it up. And they're just like, it's fine, no. But that was, yeah, I think that was a lot of fun. It was really neat, just design in general.
Designing it at first was, the layout was challenging because we knew it was going to be different levels. And I think coming up with the funicular made it a lot easier.
That solved a lot of our
otherwise
problems.
We weren't going to be able to get around quickly enough to really play. But I think what my favorite thing about the layout ended up being is that we had a rumor that the school was an insane asylum, and it was at the very top, which completely made sense to me. I was like, of course it's going to be up here. It's hard to get away from. It doesn't, if we're going to be pessimistic about it, it's not going to bother anybody else in their daily lives, kind of out of sight, out of mind. So it lent itself to some of those rumors really nicely.
I think for me, the Turnbellow Bay Resort in particular, it was just an exercise in what is the gaudiest 80s thing that we could come up with. From the logo to just the building design, the colors of these Gareth magenta and teal. And its design being these huge towers and all this there's block glass walls and things, and just this neon casino on the inside it's just this hideous thing that definitely existed back in the 80s, but we just turned it up to its most logical conclusion, and then to plunk it in the middle of a western town that had never seen a tourism increase of any kind, that was still touting itself as a taxidermy capital. Was just the most ridiculous thing. I really liked that part.
We definitely creatively, as far as creating the town, we did just kind of throw stuff in there. We're like, yeah, taxidermy, put that in. I'm sure it'll be fun. It'll be fine.
An insane asylum, yeah, sure.
Insane asylum with the taxidermy. We put in so many bizarre things. It makes sense for a small western town, but at the same time, it's this does not mix well at all.
While we were in world building, I'm like, how am I gonna make this all work together? I don't know how any of this goes together.
I think it's funny because when we were designing Red Oaks, and partially when I sat in when they were designing Perch Pike, we were so cautious with Red Oaks, and we were so meticulous with it, and every part of Red Oaks is fully designed, and we know what each building is, even if we've never touched it in game, and we know all the businesses, we know all the homes, we know absolutely everything about Red Oaks and where everything is located, and we really made it a reasonable town that could actually exist, with just and it's one quirk. It's oh, we're super into sporks, but Coyote Canyon is just bonkers. We just went all out for Coyote Canyon, and I think it was us just sort of responding to the more gentle, restrained aesthetics of Red Oaks, and then just kind of going, oh, we're just gonna do anything for Coyote Canyon because we're virtual, we're not even in person.
Sometimes it's hard to turn off that little voice inside. Is like, how do we top ourselves, kind of thing.
I know a funicular. I know a casino. So Emil, what were some of the challenges then of designing? Like you talked about it a little bit, but what were some of the kind of specific challenges of designing a game and a cultural a culture to build within like Coyote Canyon for that would like make a cohesive story?
The biggest challenge I had was figuring out a layout that made sense. I always knew that it was going to be like a multi-tiered like town. I just didn't know how feasible that was. I kind of I mirrored it off of like a town in Arizona that actually exists called Jerome.
Jerome was kind of our inspiration.
Which was what I was originally going to go for the entire town, which is very small. It's super tiny. And then I had to expand it out to include all of the things that you guys added. Because I mean, that's what I was imagining in my head. I knew it was going to be like on the side of a hill or something, and it was going to be very small. But then you add an insane asylum, a drive-in theater, and like all this other stuff, and I'm like, well, none of that fits. So I had to add like a commercial district and all this other stuff. So it was trying to figure out, and then Janelle came up with the funicular idea. So like I thank you for that, because that kind of solved almost all of my problems with just the layout and design. And then it was just filling it with things that made sense for the town. I have places that we never went to. Like just I have a list. It's just a huge document of what's in the town. It's not as comprehensive as Red Oaks, but it's close enough. To the point that I know like what buildings are there, what their backstory is, all this stuff for them. But yeah, the biggest challenge by far was figuring out what the layout was going to be like.
Very good, very good. Okay, so here's sort of one of the meaty parts of our time together. Plot. Let's talk about favorite moments. Let's talk about whatever plot points, that crazy ending at the end of our season. Remember, we have that spoiler warning at the front, so like feel free to just like spoil away. Talk about anything at all. So I will start though with kind of the elephant in the room. At the beginning of our show tonight, I did mention that Coyote Canyon is a prequel to our first story set in Red Oaks. And the final episode of Coyote Canyon sort of sets that up. Again, as a reminder to our listeners, if you want to listen to Red Oaks, you have to go to thatwashingtonsound.com, just one word, thatwashingtonsound.com, and you can listen to the entirety of Red Oaks Season 1, and then you can get caught up and understand why we suddenly switched characters near the end of Coyote Canyon. But yeah, I think I'm going to start with Paul on this one, because I think you had the most emotional hit at the end of this season than I think any of the rest of us did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Remind me the actual name of the little boy. Jamie, yeah. It's like, yeah, because he's part of my little hippie camp, and out of nowhere he's just kidnapped, kind of thing. It's like you talked about that like long pause I had. It's like, I know what has to happen. I don't want this to happen, kind of.
I know. Again, for those of you who have seen the video, Emil actually edited out a lot. Whoops. Sorry, I accidentally hit mute. But Emil actually edited out a lot of just the silence of Paul, like considering what the options are to sort of wrap things up, or whether or not he's gonna use his wish here for Jamie, or if he's gonna take on the mantle of Mr. Gray Sky and all that. But it was a while, and like the rest of us are kind of like, come on.
Yeah.
It was a huge emotional hit. You'd built up a good relationship with Jamie, even in like the 2-ish episodes. The 2-ish sessions rather that he was part of our team.
It was really emotional for me, and of course for Orion, and just like gave him a really awesome objective going forward, kind of thing. A really like strong strong thing to work towards, as well as like that was also the moment when everything started clicking.
Yeah.
But the ending with like our original thing, and that totally blew my mind too. Like I know there were a few hints here and there about stuff at the time, but like I guess luckily I forgot a lot. Like especially with the God Syncla kind of thing and
Yep.
all that. But oh, that it was so well done, so well done. It was awesome.
Yeah, so Jamie gets kidnapped and gets pulled into like this portal, and several years later, our original cast from Red Oaks is listening to that Washington Sound and listening to the story of Coyote Canyon being told through the I forgot the name of the
Ancient Myths
the
Radio.
Ancient Myths. Ancient Myths Radio broadcast that sort of is like a Twilight Zone-y type thing, but on the radio, telling the story of what quote unquote really happened in Coyote Canyon. And we realized that like Dodd, our powered character who is 8 years old, kind of matches up with this Jamie kid who was like abducted when he was a toddler, and it's like several years later, and he's old enough to be like, and also it's so funny that Dodd is just like near the ceiling, just kind of hovering.
No, he's hovering, but like he's cross-legged, sitting down on the ceiling. That's
he's like
doing his homework.
Down.
He was like blasé about the entire thing too, right?
He wasn't paying attention. He was doing his homework.
Yeah.
He doesn't know
We're
yet, and the
all
rest of us.
looking up, and he's just like, "What's up, guys?" Like, what?
and we're just like, oh my gosh.
And like that show is supposed to be like all fictional or like conspiracy theory. I think there's a mix, right, Emil? Like some of it is just like these are stories and folklore, and some of it's like it's
Did it happen?
that
Maybe.
did this happen?
Yeah.
We don't know.
It's kind of what it reminds me of is like kind of in Men in Black, where they start seriously looking at the Inquirer newspaper,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's like these guys got the tips.
and it's great that like Ryan, Hayden's character, Ryan, is like, I knew it. It's like everything just clicks and makes sense. And Ryan is just 100% on board from go. The rest of us are like, what, really? But he's like, I knew this. Yeah, so that was the exciting like conclusion of Coyote Canyon, setting up that fact that it's this prequel to Red Oaks. But there's so many other moments like within Coyote Canyon, the season itself. We touched on a few of those, like when we were in the museum, and it's just a comedy of errors when Clay and Frankie want to blow up the mine. We talked about the popping up in the gym in the middle of the pep rally right after like escaping a potentially horrible fate. There were so many other things too, like some serious moments as well, and some puzzles that we had to solve, like when we were in the basement of the town hall and we had the statues that mirrored our movements.
That thing freaked me out so much.
Yeah.
That freaked me out so much. I was just like, I don't even wanna know. No.
I think like definitely the museum is the thing that kind of brought our characters to, like, it was chaos. We were not on the same page.
Yeah.
But it made our characters feel real. Like it's like, okay, we understand, even if we're not on the same page, we understand each other's characters now. And I think that allowed us to do so well when we did like pop up in the school the rally, and it's like how like whereas before it was chaos and we managed to get out of it, it's like we have to work together to like move out of this together.
Free burgers at the A&W.
Free shakes
Free shakes at the A&W. Everybody go.
So I liked that that kind of that conclusion there. Like we had one major event together.
Yeah.
That was just chaos and we barely escaped, and one major event where like nothing really harmful would have happened in that situation. We still had to be somewhere, but we actually worked together. So I think those were the two like biggest highlights of us as a group.
I want to talk about some of the more like dramatic moments now, because like we've spent a lot of time talking about the really funny things that happened, and we didn't even get into the point where we like faked a photo to get into the city hall, which is so ridiculous, it's so far-fetched, and there's no way that should have worked, but it did.
That was but we need to talk about that for a minute.
Just Clay like, yeah, Mr. Mayor, we've got a pinhole camera here.
Whose idea was that?
I think it was mine.
Was it your idea?
Partly mine. I think
We all.
I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Frankie's, because Frankie was like, "Hey, is there anything like square in this area?"
Yes. It was Frankie's fault that we got in that situation. Yes. And then Clay was like, we need to take a picture of it, but the mayor misunderstood.
Yeah. And
so like all of a sudden you had to like take a picture, and I grabbed a flashlight because I was like, if there's no flash, this isn't working. that was the best.
But yeah, I want to talk about the more dramatic moments in the game. We talked a bit about Orion and Jamie's relationship. But there were other parts too, like Penny has sort of this ongoing thing about like her family.
Yeah, which ended up like playing a bit of a bigger role than I expected it to be, because for Penny to want to leave, like mom was in charge of this business, so it's like something passed down to the women in the family. So there's this pressure that like she's a senior, which means next year she's already had some experience like working in this environment, and she hates it. So like she's a senior, and that means like any freedom she had, any hopes of leaving she had, are like almost squashed. So originally it was supposed to be like mom is not paying attention, but she just has the expectation that this is what you're gonna do. There's no other way. Like, this is what you're doing. And because she was so in charge, like Penny's dad wasn't supposed to be quite as like, he was supposed to be a little bit more aware than he ended up being, but I think that's just due to the nature of how the story went. But he doesn't really have as much to say because like he's not in charge really.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, and I liked that Penny was at least able to question her. Like she heard some rumors, like she heard the whispers, and like heard her dad talking to this person, stole his like schedule book. So she has just a very little bit to go on of like maybe even selfishly, like if this is a scandal, if this is something wrong, then there's a way for me to get out of it, whether I have to expose my own family or I have to just run away before I get trapped in this, like whatever it was, Penny was going to use it to try to get some kind of truth out of the situation. So that was interesting.
Another thing that I thought of too was sort of Frankie and just having to deal with this financial burden of having a sick mother, and like that money played a much bigger role in this season than it did in our previous ones, because in Red Oaks more or less like all of our characters were relatively well off, so money really wasn't an issue in that first season. But here money became kind of a regular feature, and I think the one character most affected by that was Frankie. So if you want to like elaborate a little bit more about your thoughts on that, Hayden.
Well, just like character-wise, there are totally moments where I would have done things if it wasn't for all of you guys just shouting at me and telling me not to do it, and like continuously, and me still, I think, trying to do it a couple times. And
I really wanted you to play in the
casino. I wanted to as well, man. I could have made a few bucks, but
dude, I was so scared you're gonna like lose your soul or something if you played, or like, go blank like everyone else was. I was like, don't do it.
But what if I hit it big? You don't know.
I mean, that would have been great, but it was also when we come to find out, it wasn't real anyway.
What's a soul worth if we get that?
Okay. So, like, I mean, I guess we kind of get an idea, but would you be willing to say if there was any like deeper thing that would have happened if he went in and played?
I have in my notes, and this is legitimate. It says if someone plays in the casino, follow the plot of Cuphead.
Oh.
We missed that. Oh,
So we have to like fight our way through because we made a deal with the devil.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I put it as a joke, but that was going to be like a weird, trippy side thing that would have happened to like get out of the casino. It was going to be like,
went to fight cartoon characters.
yeah, pretty much. That was kind of the idea that I had for like the consequence of like being in the casino. But a more realistic one that I probably would have ended up going with was the longer that you stayed in the casino to like play, the easier it was for the hollows to consume you. Because you couldn't like tell that they were consuming you. And as opposed to the hollows that like open up and try and wrap around you, these just slowly begin to wrap around you. Like instead of it kind of looks like a disease where paper is just slowly enveloping you. But you don't care because you're winning money.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa.
No, yeah, in my mind, Frankie's not the most clever. I mean, her max stat was brawn, and I think if brains wasn't her lowest stat, it was the second to lowest stat. But she's looking out for the family. She's not exactly going to do it in the most clever way, but she's going to try to like do what she can. And so in her case, that's either hard work or, a quick payday, I guess.
That's good. That's good. All right. Here we are, guys. This is your chance now. You can ask Emil any questions you might have about Coyote Canyon, your characters, plot points, or anything else that we may not have answered tonight. I will remind everybody, Emil does reserve the right to not answer a question if he's going to use it in a future game session. So, have at it.
So many questions, though. Okay. My first question is, if I had gone through either of my doors, what would I have heard or seen? Am I allowed to know that?
If you had gone through, if you had gone through the door in the hotel room, what would you have heard?
I think both, because I don't remember where it was that Penny was overhearing stuff that she shouldn't have.
The hotel.
Oh yes, in the hotel. What would I have seen or heard?
If you had gone to the hotel, you would have heard a therapy session from someone in the school that hates you.
Oh.
And specific reasons why, which I won't reveal in case I need to use them later.
Okay.
But you've affected someone negatively in some way, and
I killed your bunny. I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't know.
But like the whole thing with Kimberly, right? Yeah, the whole thing with Kimberly. Sorry, I'm working on like future ones, so I'm trying to get all my names straight. The thing with Kimberly is that everyone likes her. So like she usually doesn't have a problem with any issues with anyone in particular. But this would have like opened up her mind to like, oh, there's people that have issues with me that hide it, that don't bring it up to the surface, and I am affecting others around me. Like the character beats and moments were really in that hallway.
And we just didn't do anything with that.
Well,
I think we reacted very naturally after.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That was perfect.
Yeah. And I guess my other one was that the other doorway that led into, I guess, my house, and like, what was that? Was that actually my house? Was it a way of escape? Like,
that was actually your house.
We could have gotten out, guys.
Yep. You could have walked. I mean, I figured you guys figured that was the case when you went to that old man in the pod and took the stone. I figured that you thought, oh, this is an actual place. The old man did warn you about a quirk to the doors, which was if you stayed too long or the door shut or anything like that, you would be trapped in. It's kind of like you are in that space, yes. But if you lose your connection through the way that you came, you are lost. You only exist in that world as long as the door is open.
Oh, interesting.
So you're actually affecting the real world in that place, but you can't be in two places at once. So, like, the only thing tethering to you there is that doorway for a reason that I can't explain right now because of reasons.
That door would have gotten shut somehow. We would have failed.
Yeah, if that door had gone shut, things would have ended up very different. Like the last door that Kimberly opened to that empty void of nothingness.
Yeah.
I'd wish you had looked around the corner of that doorway, like because it was just a door frame in the middle of void space.
I thought I did. Didn't I say I
No,
took the flashlight to it and like tried to feel for a light?
you
Yeah,
stuck.
but like look like around all
Yeah,
the
look
inside and
around.
around.
Oh, like completely around.
Yeah, I wish you had looked like behind the doorway.
What would have happened?
I can't tell you now
Darn it! No, of course.
because behind the doorway was like the real crazy thing.
No, that's terrible. Okay. Will we find out later?
Possibly.
Okay.
We'll have to go back to the video store.
And like the other thing is, what happens if you go to that door from the other side?
Oh. Yeah, because there's the one in Red Oaks. There's the one that led to Red Oaks.
Yeah, there was one titled Benson for Cole Benson, a character that we had that died in season 1 of Red Oaks.
Yeah.
The door led to his house.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm trying to think. Things went so fast. There were things that like we explored, but it was like half baked. I guess, when did you decide, or how did you decide that like the hippies were gonna have like this special connection and this like blue power at their disposal?
Immediately. That was one of the first things after Paul. I spoke with Paul a little bit just to get like a frame of reference for what the hippies did and like what he thought happened during the bonfires. And he gave me like this description of like these spectral lights that pop everywhere and do these like different colors and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can work with that. Because I had already linked Syncla to the bonfire. Like I did that immediately. And for those that haven't listened to Red Oak, Syncla was the dark entity that they fought in Red Oaks, and it ended with the entity being pushed through a portal that is now Jessica, another character's earring.
It's a good earring.
Yeah. But I linked Syncla immediately to them, and I knew that they were going to have the Will of Fire, which was what Paul called the like central theme of the hippies. And I knew that they were going to be able to have some kind of special like spectral flame that assisted in this otherworldly like stuff. That was an immediate decision. That's why I was trying to give Orion the powder so early, so that I could like develop that early on and potentially pass it on to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But we figured that stuff out near the end, so we weren't able to like develop that completely.
The other question I had, because I don't think we've mentioned this yet, you designed this game with the idea that we went basically the route we took was completely in reverse to how you wanted us to discover things, like the order of discovery. So like it for the most part, because like I remember thinking it was so weird once we got like we took the mine train to the end, and like there's bags of supplies, which you would expect to find like as you're entering more and more dangerous situations. And I was like, where has this equipment been? Like, we've been using rocks.
we were about to blow everything up.
and then you had mentioned, like, I thought you guys were going to enter all of this from this direction, and you didn't. So how, like, did you panic? And then how did you kind of run with it after that?
I kind of set up the story fairly linearly, thinking that you guys would hit specific beats. So I put like supplies and like objects and important stuff in like the places where I thought you would like sequentially go to. And I immediately realized that that's a horrible idea. Because you guys, I mean, the nature of the whole story is that you guys can do whatever you want. If you had wanted to, you could have just left Coyote Canyon and then not have to deal with any of this stuff. But then I'm like, hold on. I also can't plan for these objects to like magically appear when they need them. So I'm like, I'm just gonna leave them where they're at and see if they ever get any of this stuff. Because the things that you absolutely needed to get was the stones. Like without the stones, everything would have been horrible. But like the rest of the stuff, you didn't necessarily need it. It was just a little bonus if you looked around and found it. So I just left it where it was, and I'm like, let's see if they get it.
I have a question, if you can answer. Any of the rumors that we came up with, did you choose any particular ones to incorporate as truth?
Okay. What do you mean by true? Like if the rumors were true?
Yeah.
I incorporated all of them in some way or another.
Okay.
Like whether or not that they were completely true, I kind of put it into the game. Like the hippies go out at night and there's a bonfire and people get really attached to it. Obviously that was true because there was the bonfire out there. There was one that says that there is like a mother lode of copper inside of the first mine. And I kind of put that in there. There is a mother lode, but not of copper, of pod people.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
That are just waiting. Now, all of this, like by the end of the session, everything was a dream.
Right.
But you guys haven't gone back to make sure that it was all a dream.
Oh.
Clearly.
So,
But obviously, yeah, there were things that weren't, because when I came back, I still had the bandage from my ribs being broken. And I think
Jamie's still gone.
what?
And Jamie's still gone.
Jamie's still gone.
yep, there's some things that are still around.
All right, last chance for questions.
I had a couple.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the dude in the pod who had the crystal on his head. Like, I don't know, maybe I missed something. Was he related to Colt?
The dude in the pod was not related to Colt.
Oh,
He just had enough of the stone like energy in him that it caused like a natural reaction, or like not a reaction, a reminiscence,
like
a closeness.
thinking kind of thing.
Yeah, they were kind of linked because of the power of the stone.
That's why
No.
he had the same voice.
No, they have the same voice because I don't have a very big range of voices.
I have a question. Did they kill that guy by taking the stone out, or was he okay afterwards?
He was okay afterwards.
Okay.
But you guys,
Oh, I thought we
Wasn't
killed
sure.
him and pooped in his sink and just left that a mess.
you definitely pooped in a sink. But you didn't kill him. You didn't figure out who he was though, and that was a bit of a bummer. But that's okay.
I have one more. How did Jamie get down in that place with the overflowing goop?
So that was on me. In the first episode, you were supposed to see Jamie in like the trailer park, not the trailer park. Sorry, parked with the rest of the hippies up in the Starlight drive-in area. And you were supposed to see him like wandering around and stuff, and then the Nugents were gonna take Jamie on a little trip to First Mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I omitted it because I was so I was like trying to like manage so many things, and then by the time I remembered, oh no, this has to be in there, I forgot. So like I couldn't figure out a way to retcon it.
Superpowered anyway.
So. Yeah, he was down in First Mine because he was on like a little field trip. Now the Nugents were already taken by the Hollows at that point. So you guys actually destroyed two of them. No, you destroyed both of them when you consumed with Colt.
Well, I guess that's the other thing, because we didn't know like if those people, if there was any possibility of like restoring whoever was. I don't even know if I realized those were people that had been consumed. You know, like I just thought they were creatures.
I just thought they were monsters.
if they could transform into a different form, they were already consumed. If they were just trying to consume other people, they were hollows. They were just like husks. So anyone that turned into a giant spider or anything like that, that was someone that was already consumed.
Yeah.
Cool. My question, and we're kind of running over time now, so we're gonna kind of start wrapping things up. But my last question is, when's the next Blam album coming out?
Yes.
Weirdly enough, Blam mysteriously disappeared after their performance in Coyote Canyon. They did make a weird comeback in 1992 in a different town.
Interesting.
Okay.
The 12th member always causing trouble.
Actually, that's a weird thing. There was 20 members in the reunion in 1992.
20-member Blam. All right, Emil, any teasers for our next seasons?
I mean, we have. Okay, so the plan is that the next season is going to be Red Oaks, the Monster Roster, which is a week-long movie festival during spring break of 1994, and it's going to use all the characters from Campaign 1 of like Red Oaks. So we'll finally be able to introduce to the audience, like, what these characters were, what this town is, and all that. But in order to preface everything, we're going to be doing a quick, like, 1 or 2 session episode entitled Another Pair of Eyes. It's basically the sequence of events that happened in our original campaign, but from a different perspective.
And Jaden gets to star in that one.
I'm so excited. I cannot wait.
Yeah, Jaden wasn't a part of our Red Oaks campaign due to complications with scheduling and all that stuff this time around. So
I will say, Jaden was a huge part of Red Oaks Season 1, just not as a player.
That's true. She did assist me in writing a lot of the stuff for Season 1. But this time around, she's going to be one of the players that kind of goes through and sees what happened and who these characters are, and interacting with the powered character and all that stuff in a lead up to the big season of Monster Roster.
Very cool, very cool. So that's coming up soon. Any word on wrapping up Perch Pike?
We are working on it. We should have, hopefully, by the end of the year, we'll have the last episode of Perch Pike.
So Perch Pike was our Season 2 with an entirely different cast in a different town in Washington, a coastal town called Perch Pike. And so due to the pandemic, we weren't able to finish the final session to wrap up that storyline. But the first part of it is available on that WashingtonSound.com, just like the first season of Red Oaks as well. Both of those campaigns, we can't post them on podcasts and whatnot because of copyrighted material, but they are available for listening for free, ad-free, all that stuff on that WashingtonSound.com. All right, we are out of time. I want to thank all of you guys for appearing on our after show and for letting me be the host this evening. It's been a blast doing it, or maybe a blam.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I just showed the blam logo. For those of you that are listening, I just showed the blam logo on the screen. But thank you guys out there for listening to us either through our podcast or watching us on YouTube and letting us ramble on about our game and letting us tell these really fun stories. WASH, That Washington Sound Coyote Canyon After Show, was written and hosted by me, Gabriel Rodriguez. My guests were Janelle Farr Rodriguez, Paul Ling, Jaden Farr, Hayden Colvin, and Emil Rodriguez. That Washington Sound was created by Emil Rodriguez, and he also serves as our game master. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.